Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into something specific.
Hmm.
What are the real factors influencing first-generation immigrants in the U.S. getting into that top 1% income bracket?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question.
You sent over this great report, lots of economic data, research on income, mobility. That's our main source here.
Right.
And our mission, really, is to pull out the key insights. Income realities, the challenges they face, policy stuff, how mobility works over time, which industries they're in, and entrepreneurship as a path.
Exactly. Understanding the whole picture.
So based on that material, let's jump right in. First off, what even is the top 1% income-wise these days?
It's pretty striking. The report highlights that nationally for 2024, you needed to hit $787,712.
Wow, 7,000.
Yeah, and what's interesting, like the source pointed out, is that's a big jump, like 20% up from roughly $652,000 the year before in 2023.
And compared to the median U.S. income, that's around $75,000, right?
Yeah. Right, about 75K. So it just
Right.
shows the scale, the sheer difference we're talking about, really puts it in perspective.
Absolutely. And the data you shared shows this isn't static either. Like
Right.
back in 2014,
Mhm.
it was around $380,000. And the projections in the report, they suggest it keeps climbing, maybe $700,000 by 2025.
Yeah, at least $700 Ks. It was already projected over 650K for 2024 before the final numbers came in. So it just keeps rising. That bar to entry gets higher.
Definitely underscores the increasing financial threshold for that group.
And, it's crucial to remember that national number hides a lot of variation state by state. The sources really detail this.
Oh, for sure. Like California, the Northeast.
Exactly. To hit the top 1% in places like Connecticut, Massachusetts, California, you're talking well over $1 million in annual income. Connecticut's the highest, over $1.15 million.
Over $1 million. Wild.
Yeah. But then you look at, say, West Virginia or Mississippi, and the threshold is way lower, around $420,000, maybe $440,000.
That's a huge difference. Really emphasizes the different economic realities across the U.S., like you said,
Hmm.
based on that data.
Totally.
And another key point from the report you sent,
Yep.
we need to be super clear we're talking income, not wealth.
Yes. Vital distinction. The material differentiates that clearly. Top 1% wealth, that's your net worth, assets, everything. That starts around $13 million.
13 million, okay.
So, the sources imply having one high income year, maybe from selling a business or something, doesn't automatically put you in that top wealth category.
Right. Income's more like a snapshot, isn't it? A flow over a specific year.
Exactly. It doesn't always show the full financial picture. Could be a one-off event.
Mhm.
So income is key for this chat, but it's not the whole story of someone's finances.
Okay, got it. So keeping that 787K-ish national income threshold in mind, how do first-generation immigrants actually stack up against native-born citizens? Income-wise, I mean. What does the data you highlighted show initially?
Well, initially, yeah, the data you shared points to an income gap.
Yeah.
If you look at 2023 median weekly earnings for full-time workers, foreign-born workers were at $987. That's about, what, 86.6% of the $1,140 for native-born workers.
Okay, so a gap there.
And looking back a bit, median household income in 2018, foreign-born adults were around $45,800. That was lower than second-gen immigrants at $58,100, and the overall median of $58,200.
So those initial numbers definitely suggest a financial hurdle for many first-gen folks based on that material.
Sure.
But like the report makes clear, it's not one single story, is it? Country of origin seems to matter a lot.
Oh, absolutely. The sources really hammer this home. Where an immigrant comes from makes a huge difference. Like Asian immigrants in 2019,
Yeah.
their median household income was $88,000. That was actually higher than U.S.-born Asians at $85,000 and higher than the overall immigrant median.
Interesting. Higher than U.S.-born Asians.
Yeah. And even within that group, it gets more specific. The report points out Indian immigrants, for example, their median household income was way up at $119,000 that same year.
$119,000 median. Wow, that's a significant difference highlighted in that data.
It really is.
And, no surprise here, education plays a big role too, right? The report must touch on that.
Definitely. Higher education generally means higher earnings. That holds true. And what's kind of interesting from the data you shared,
What's that?
in some cases, foreign-born individuals with bachelor's degrees or higher might actually earn slightly more than native-born folks with similar degrees.
Huh. Okay.
And of course, the type of profession matters hugely. The report probably notes that concentration in higher earning fields like tech and healthcare.
Right. And it seems like, based on the trends in your report, time in the U.S. helps too. Like, the longer someone's here, the better their income potential. Is that fair?
That's a really good point. And yeah, it matches the data. There's a positive link shown in your report between how long someone's been in the U.S. and their income growth.
Made sense.
Over time, they gain U.S.-specific experience. English proficiency usually improves. They build networks. All that contributes.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the really recent data from 2023, which you included, it showed the median household income for immigrants, $78,700, was actually a tiny bit higher than for U.S.-born households, $77,600.
Whoa, okay, so the median gap might actually be closing or even flipping slightly in recent data.
It seems that way based on that specific snapshot. Suggests that while there might be initial gaps, many immigrant groups do catch up or even surpass native-born median incomes over time, a nuance the report captures well.
That's definitely encouraging. But thinking back to that huge top 1% number, the 787K, even if median incomes are similar, getting to that very top tier might still have unique challenges for first-gen immigrants.
Absolutely. Even with comparable medians, that top percentile is a different league.
So what are some of those specific systemic hurdles the report you analyzed highlights?
Well, the report really flags several big ones. Language barriers are huge.
Yeah, I can imagine.
As the sources likely detail, if your English proficiency is limited, it's a major block to moving up economically. It often pushes people into lower-paying jobs, ones that don't need much communication.
Right. Limits your options straight away.
And it goes beyond just jobs. It makes accessing basic stuff harder, understanding your rights at work, dealing with paperwork, banking, even healthcare. All that can impact finances long term. The data you shared probably shows that clear link. Better English proficiency often means better economic outcomes, higher earnings, better employment rates. And, like the report might say, a lot of immigrants in 2019 reported limited English skills.
And in those higher-paying professional jobs, communication is usually key, isn't it?
Exactly. It's often non-negotiable for moving beyond entry level, so that directly hits their ability to compete for those top 1% type roles.
Makes total sense. Hard to climb the ladder if you can't communicate effectively in that environment. What's another big hurdle the report identified?
Another major one in the material you provided is getting foreign education and professional credentials recognized.
Yeah. That sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. Unlike some places, the U.S. doesn't have one central system for this, so it's often up to individual employers or state licensing boards or colleges to figure it out.
Which sounds messy.
It can be complex, yeah, and costly for the immigrant. They often have to pay private companies to evaluate their degrees or certificates, and the results can vary, as the report might point out.
I'll guarantee.
Right. And for licensed jobs, think doctors, lawyers, engineers, nurses. It's even more complex. Each state has its own rules.
No.
And if your credentials aren't recognized, it leads to underemployment. Skilled people taking low-skilled jobs just to get by. It delays everything and really caps their earning potential, keeps them far from that top 1%.
I can only imagine how frustrating that must be. To have the skills but hit that kind of wall. It's not just lost income for them, it's lost talent for the economy too.
Exactly. A point the sources might implicitly make, it's a waste of human capital.
Okay, so language, credential recognition. What's the third key challenge the report brings up?
The third big one underscored in your report is the lack of established professional networks, social capital.
Right. Who you know.
It's huge in the U.S. job market. The sources likely say a big chunk of jobs are found through connections, right?
Yeah, definitely.
First-gen immigrants often arrive without those built-in networks that native-born folks might take for granted. Building them from scratch takes serious time and effort.
And you have to figure out the cultural norms too, I bet.
Exactly. Understanding U.S. professional culture, how networking even works here, that can be a challenge, as the report might suggest. This limits knowing about jobs that aren't even advertised.
The hidden job market again.
Precisely. Makes it much harder to break into those really competitive, high-paying industries where connections are often vital.
Are there resources to help with that?
Yeah, some organizations, maybe mentioned in your sources, like Upwardly Global, try to help, mentoring, resume help, networking events, but it's still a significant hurdle to overcome. And just understanding workplace culture itself is key.
Okay, so language, credentials, networks. Clearly major systemic issues. Now, zooming out a bit, how do actual immigration policies, visa rules, stuff like that, affect this journey to the top 1%?
Oh, they have a huge impact. Your report likely details this. The type of visa someone has can really dictate their economic path.
How so?
Well, different visas have different limits. Some might tie you to one employer, making it hard to switch to a better-paying job. Others might limit the type of work you can do. Temporary visas, for example. Career advancement can be restricted.
So less flexibility.
Right. And just the uncertainty some people face about their long-term status, it makes planning a career path really difficult.
Yeah, hard to plan long-term if you don't know if you can stay.
Exactly. And while we have visas like the H-1B for skilled workers, often in tech, those have caps, strict requirements, and they're definitely not a guaranteed ticket to the top 1%. And the report might also note the U.S. doesn't really have straightforward visa paths specifically for foreign entrepreneurs.
Which seems odd, given how many successful immigrant entrepreneurs there are.
It can discourage business creation, which, as we'll get to, is a major route to high income. Even things like accessing education or financial aid to upskill can depend on your immigration status.
Right.
Plus, all the ongoing debates and changes in policy create this background noise of uncertainty that can make integration harder. It's a real tangle of regulations.
It really sounds like the policy side can be either a facilitator or a major obstacle course.
Yeah.
Okay, thinking longer term now, the report you analyzed also looks at economic mobility over time and across generations. What's the pattern there?
The general trend, as your report probably shows, is upward mobility. Over time, many immigrants do see their incomes rise as they adapt, gain experience, improve skills, learn English better.
That makes sense.
But hitting that top 1% within the first generation, that's tough because of those starting gaps and the barriers we just talked about.
Right.
Where you really see significant progress, and the sources likely highlight this, is in the second generation, the kids of immigrants.
The U.S.-born children.
Yeah. Research consistently finds they tend to get more education, land better jobs, and generally achieve greater economic success than where their parents started.
That's a common story, isn't it?
It is. And the report might even mention that kids from lower-income immigrant families often have a better chance of reaching the middle class than U.S.-born kids from similar backgrounds.
Interesting. Why is that? Do we know?
Complex reasons probably drive, focus on education, community support, but the pattern is there. Of course, how fast integration happens depends on things like education level, if the first generation's skills were transferable, the local economy where they settled.
Sure, location matters.
And while long-term earnings growth for immigrants might eventually match native-born folks, that initial gap can mean the top 1% remains a multi-generational goal for many families. Mobility unfolds over time.
It's fascinating, that generational climb. Speaks volumes about the first generation's efforts. Okay, let's shift focus a bit to industries. Are first-gen immigrants hitting that top 1% evenly across the board, based on your info?
No, definitely not evenly. The report likely shows it's pretty uneven.
Where do we see them overrepresented at the top?
Mostly in those high-paying sectors. Tech, finance, healthcare, often linked to high education levels and specialized skills.
Like the Indian immigrants you mentioned earlier in IT and finance.
Exactly. Your sources probably highlight groups like that, overrepresented in high-salary IT, management, business, finance roles. Immigrants are also huge contributors in the STEM fields generally, which tend to pay well.
Makes sense. Where might they be underrepresented at that top level?
Maybe more in traditional sectors or ones with really high barriers like specific licenses, or where deep, long-standing networks are crucial, or where native-level English fluency is absolutely demanded for client work.
Gotcha.
But the report might also suggest a growing trend. More foreign-born workers are making inroads into those top percentiles, especially in states that already have large, successful immigrant populations in high-earning fields. So things are shifting.
It sounds like having those high-demand transferable skills, or finding that entrepreneurial angle, is key to breaking into the top 1%. You mentioned success stories. The report probably alludes to some. Any examples spring to mind?
Oh, absolutely. Despite all the challenges, there are tons of inspiring examples the report likely backs up. Tech is obvious. Sundar Pichai at Google, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, both first-gen immigrants leading massive companies.
Right, huge names.
Business and finance, too. Just countless successful companies founded or led by immigrants.
What are the common threads? What does the report suggest helps them succeed against the odds?
Common factors often include, high education, especially STEM, but also things like a really strong work ethic, resilience, bouncing back from setbacks, a willingness to take risks, and often leveraging entrepreneurship, plus that drive, Often a powerful desire for a better future that fuels them. And it's across diverse fields, too. Think Josie Notori in fashion or Elon Musk across multiple industries. They show it's possible via different routes with skills, grit, and opportunity.
Really powerful examples. So you keep mentioning entrepreneurship. The report seems to really flag that as a viable route to the top 1%.
Yeah.
Why is that so significant for first-gen immigrants?
It really stands out because, well, the report likely says immigrants actually start businesses at a higher rate than native-born folks.
Higher rate? Interesting.
Yeah. And it lets them kind of sidestep some traditional barriers, like maybe language issues in a corporate setting or getting foreign credentials recognized for a specific job. They can build something based on their own skills and vision.
Create their own opportunity.
Exactly. They often leverage unique skills, maybe insights from their home countries, cross-cultural understanding, or spot needs in underserved markets. Their diverse backgrounds bring fresh ideas, innovation.
And they contribute massively to the economy, right? Job creation.
Hugely. The report probably highlights this.
Hmm.
Think about how many Fortune 500 companies were started by immigrants or their kids. It's substantial.
So it's a path with huge potential. Are there specific challenges just for immigrant entrepreneurs?
Oh, sure. Access to capital can be tougher initially, navigating regulations, building trust in a new market. But the drive, the potential payoff, the autonomy, it makes it a really compelling path to that top 1% for many.
It definitely sounds like that entrepreneurial drive, finding those unique angles, can be a real game changer.
Yeah.
Okay, as we start to wrap up our deep dive into this report, what are the absolute key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the main thing is that the path to the top 1% for first-generation immigrants is complex. They face real hurdles.
Yeah.
Initial income gaps, those systemic barriers like language, credential recognition, building networks, and policy matters a lot.
Right. Hurdles are real.
But, and this is crucial from the report, there is clear upward economic mobility over time, especially looking across generations. Things tend to get better.
Progress happens.
Yes, and entrepreneurship really stands out. It emerges as this powerful, frequently used route to high financial success. Immigrants have a strong track record there.
Yeah.
So the success stories show it's definitely possible through determination, skills, and often by carving out their own path via business.
That's a great summary. It really captures the challenges, but also the potential and the progress based on that insightful report you analyzed. So for you, our listener, here's something to chew on. Considering that the bar for the top 1% keeps rising, and knowing how diverse immigrant experiences are, what specific policy changes or maybe individual strategies do you think could most effectively help more first-generation immigrants reach that top economic tier in the future?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Definitely complex, but worth thinking about after everything we've explored today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.